everybody, it's Sally here, talking to you from lockdown Britain in the midst of this awful coronavirus crisis that's sweeping across the globe. I thought I'd have a little look through me machine knitting videos, and I was a bit surprised when I looked down the list on my Calamunda Crafts page to discover that I don't appear to have a video on there on increasing and decreasing. I'm pretty sure I did one, must be quite a long time ago, so it's probably buried in the files on the beginner's circle group, or it might have been part of a cal. But anyway, I'm going to do two little videos today, one on increasing techniques, which is this first one, and the second one will be on decreasing. Let's just put that on one side. So increasing and decreasing, fairly generic techniques. I don't think there's anything that I'm going to be doing on I'm doing this on my Silver Reed SK280, the standard gauge machine. Just move that slightly to one side, see it a bit better. But I don't think there's anything that wouldn't work on any other flatbed machine, whether you've got a Brother or Toyota, or one of the plastic bed ones either. I don't think there's anything that's desperately reliant on sinker post, but if there is, we'll cover that in the video. So although I'm doing this on Silver Reed, it should apply to most of the other brands of machine as well. On the increase side, I'm going to be talking about multiple increases, and then a simple increase, and then how to do fully fashioned, both a single fully fashioned and then speeding up your knitting by doubling up the increase. And then on the decrease side, again, it will be multiple decreases, which is effectively the same as cast off. Simple decrease, the fully fashioned, again, a single fully fashioned or a doubled up fully fashioned. And then a two-step fully fashioned decrease, which more closely replicates the effect you get on hand knitting, where you're doing decreases where you get the sloping, you can actually see the sloping stitch on the face of the knitting. And then also, if you happen to have a 7-prong tool, we can have a quick look at that as well on the decreasing side. But so that's what I'll be doing on these two videos. Righty ho, so I've cast on a little bit of leftover 4-ply that I've got. I'm just peering at the picture. It looks slightly out of focus, but hopefully that's... Normally it looks okay. I might tip it up a little bit. Undo this little knob. Does that make any difference? Right, so the first one I'm going to do is the multiple increase, and this is the only one that you can only do on the carriage side. Because you need to have the yarn coming off the edge of the knitting, so you obviously haven't got any yarn on that side, so you can't increase on that side at the same time. So it's just pull forward. I'm going to pull these out to D position, or E if you've got that type of machine. There's an extra 10 needles, and just pull the yarn down through the carriage and then E-wrap as you would for a normal E-wrap cast on. Again, you don't want to be pulling the yarn too tight because you want the carriage to be able to knit that back without protesting too much, and then pull the excess back overhead. And then just knit one row across. And then you might want to pull those needles forward for a couple of rows until you've got enough there to hang another weight. And I'll do the same on this side, because obviously, as I just said, you can't do it unless you've got the yarn coming off the side of the knitting. And I always find doing it on this side slightly more cat-handed than doing it on the carriage side. My coordination seems to go to pot when I'm trying to do it on this side. But there you go. And knit back, and then just push those needles out to D. Hopefully we'll have enough knitting there now to stick another couple of claw weights on. There is your multiple increase on the sides of the knitting, carriage side only. If you wanted a slightly firmer edge, you could do the double E-wrap cast on, which just make that edge a bit firmer. Depends really how sturdy you need it to be. If it's just going to be incorporated into a seam, the basic E-wrap is perfectly okay. The only other time that I might employ different multiple increase on the side of the knitting is, it depends on the pattern it might call for it. You might need to have open stitches along the bottom here, in which case you would knit your piece on and finish it off with waste yarn, and then pick up the open loops onto the needles here, so that you've then added an extra piece of knitting onto the side. Let's do a couple more rows. The next increase I'm going to show you is the simple increase, and all you have to do for that is to pull the needle at the edge into working position, and you can do it on both sides at the same time and just knit. Pull the needle into working position, or you can pull it right forward if your carriage isn't set to hold, and knit back. Now this produces a loop on the edge of the knitting, which I'll try to show you here. And again, when you sew up, that is normally incorporated into your seam. But on some bits of knitting, I'm thinking something like Diana Sullivan's baby swirl blanket. I think you have to do the simple increases where you get this loop on the edge, and then you pick those up later. So it can sometimes be a necessary part of the item you're knitting. So if it says do a simple increase, then follow the instructions. But that's how you do a simple increase. It's just pulling the needle forward. So let's look now at the fully fashioned increase. A fully fashioned increase means that you will see the increase on the face of your knitting. So if you do that up the edge of a sleeve, or both sides of the sleeve, you'll get a nice little row of chevrons going up your sleeve seam, and it can look very effective. Now the standard one-step machine process for doing this is just to use your 3-prong transfer tool, pick up the outer 3 stitches on the outer edge of your piece of knitting, lift them off, move them out one, put them back onto the needles, and then to fill the space you need to pick up the heel, as it's called, of the stitch on the inside of the knitting, and it's this bump underneath from the previous row, the top of the stitch from the previous row, and just hook it onto your transfer tool and put it onto the empty needle. And you can do that on both sides at the same time. Pick up the heel and put it onto the empty needle, and then knit 4 rows, or whatever your pattern says. Let's do that again. Remember when you're increasing to move your weights up regularly, because obviously your knitting is getting gradually wider, so you'll need to keep the edges weighted. Let's just do one more of those. Now, obviously these regular increases are most commonly used when you're doing a sleeve. And your sleeve pattern might say increase 1 stitch every 4th row, however many times. Now you can speed this process up slightly by, instead of just increasing 1 stitch each time, you increase 2, so you only have to do it half as often. So if, for example, your pattern said increase 1 stitch every 4th row 20 times, you could actually increase 1 stitch every 8th row, but only need to do it 10 times. So it means you're stopping less frequently and interrupting your knitting. So it actually speeds the process up. Now, to do the double increase, again, you take your 3-prong transfer tool, pick the 3 stitches up, and instead of moving them out 1, you move them out 2. And then on this stitch, you're going to pick up the heel of the stitch you just moved onto that needle. And on that stitch, again, you pick up the heel from the inside. So you've actually put 2 heel stitches onto those 2 empty needles. 1, 2. And so let's do 8 rows. And repeat that again. So move it out 2, 1, 2. Can still see what I'm doing. Yep. And you might just need to tweak the knitting down so you can see the heel. Pick it up there, and the inside one goes there. Move it out 2. And as before, move your weights up regularly. So I think that covers the most common types of increase that you'll see in a pattern. The only one I haven't covered here is where you need to do multiple increase across the row. And really, unless you've got a garter bar and you like fiddling around with the garter bar, the only way to achieve that is to take your piece of knitting off on waste yarn and then rehang it on the extra number of needles. And you obviously need to work out, unless it tells you in your pattern, the interval at which you want to do that. So if I was going to take, I've got 34, so if I was going to take that off and increase it up to 40 either side, I've got to put 6 increases in, 12 increases in all the way across there. And as I've got 60 something needles, it's going to be roughly 1 every 5 stitches. So I'd hang 4 up and then leave a space, put some more stitches on, and then pick up the heels into the gaps. But the regularity at which you would be putting heel stitches onto empty needles obviously depends on how many increases you need to do across the width of your knitting. It is a bit of a fiddly and a tedious job, but it is really the only way that you can do a multiple increase across the knitting, providing you've got enough stretch as well to get it out. So there will be a limit as to how many you can do. You can't sort of like double up, for example. If you had a pattern like that, my recommendation would be to look to see if you could knit it upside down. So rather than trying to do multiple increases across, you're doing multiple decreases across, because that is a lot easier. So let's take this off the machine. And have a little look at what the various ones look like. Oh, there it is. Let's just put that across there. And so there we have the multiple increase, which gives you a straight increase out on the side. And then you can see the simple increases where I've got these loops of knitting. Not too easy to see. Transfer tool. You can see them here, and I think it's here, the extra loops on the side. And then the fully fashioned increase, the first one I did with single increases here and here and here, and then a little bit further up you can see the double increase, which is here and here. So it is slightly more noticeable than the single one, but yeah, if you're going to have an increased stitch effect on the face of your knitting, then why not double it up and speed up the process. And then once you've finished your item, if you then mattress stitching down the sleeve, you'll get a lovely neat line of increases down the inside of your garment. It looks really good. Okie doke, so I think that's about all I need to say on the subject of increasing. So we'll stop this one and then come back and do video 2.